Across the country, governors push for marijuana reform in 2021. Reform measures for marijuana are already expected to make headlines in the new year. Many governors across the country are including calls for legalization in their state's State of the State addresses and budget speeches. State policymakers from New York to New Mexico have signaled that cannabis policy reform will be a legislative priority in 2021. At least 11 governors have mentioned marijuana in a formal address, a budget plan, or in a press conference so far, with more expected to follow. Even if they are unable to enact the reforms they're seeking, these governors' support for the issue could help cannabis policy change succeed this year, at least in some states. Let's look at what governors have to say about marijuana policy in 2021. Connecticut. Governor Ned Lamont, D.E., urged legalization of cannabis in his annual State of the State address in January, stating the policy change is happening all around us in neighboring states. Don't let out-of-state markets or, worse still, underground markets take over, he said. In the following month, the governor included a legalization proposal in his budget request for 2021. It was Lamont's informal work group that finalized recommendations for the policy change in recent months, which include the establishment of a comprehensive framework for the cultivation, manufacture, sale, possession, use, and taxation of cannabis that prioritizes public health, safety, and social justice. During last year's State of the State address, he also made a push for legalization. And during the budget address he also discussed the proposal. Kansas. In addition to marijuana reform bills introduced by lawmakers, the Kansas governor released a plan earlier this month that proposed using tax revenue collected through the legalization of medical cannabis to fund Medicaid expansion. Governor Laura Kelly explained that her legislation establishes the regulatory framework for the cultivation, testing, distribution, prescription, and purchase of medical marijuana. The introduction of this bill is already a victory for Kansans, who will receive the benefits of medical marijuana, something that, once again, our neighbors in Oklahoma and Missouri have already recognized and addressed, she concluded. Kentucky. Governor Andy Beshear D. made marijuana reform part of his State of the Commonwealth address in January. In his speech, the governor said it's time to eliminate laws that hinder us from growth and innovation, adding that he also wants to legalize sports betting. Around the time Beshear delivered the address, legislation to legalize medical cannabis was filed. Minnesota. As a means of economic stimulus and racial justice, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, D., recently advocated the legalization of marijuana. The governor told a briefing he is open to the idea of sport betting with sufficient tax revenue, but lawmakers should take a look at recreational cannabis to increase tax revenues. He pointed out that not only would marijuana tax revenue dwarf taxes on sports betting, but legalization would also help address the equity issue and, quite frankly, the racial impact of our marijuana laws. In his budget, Walz did not request a legalization request. Meanwhile, top Minnesota lawmakers introduced a bill the other day calling for the legalization of cannabis. Nevada. In last month's budget proposal, Nevada Governor Brian Sandoval said his budget proposal contained provisions for the state to continue to receive marijuana tax revenue. During his State of the State address, Governor Steve Sisolak, D., discussed his fiscal plan, stating that marijuana tax dollars will continue to fund education, ensuring that districts will be able to meet the needs of students during the pandemic and beyond. The 2019 legislature approved SB 545, which requires the proceeds from the 10% excise tax imposed on recreational marijuana sales to be deposited to the distribution school account, the governor's budget states. In the 2021 to 2023 budget, education funding will not reduce general fund allocations since the new funding was placed into the account in an enhancement. New Jersey. We are on the verge of passing an innovative and groundbreaking set of laws to reform our historically unjust approach to marijuana and cannabis, Governor Phil Murphy, D., said during his State of the State address last month. After voters approved a legalization referendum in November, advocates hoped the legislature would have moved swiftly on enabling legislation, but disagreements between legislators and the governor regarding certain provisions concerning underage people have delayed reform. New Mexico. Michelle Lujan Grisham, D., reiterated her commitment to legalizing marijuana in the state in 2021 during her State of the State speech last month. She spoke of cannabis reform as a means to generate tax revenue to help fight the coronavirus epidemic and create jobs, saying a crisis such as the one we experienced last year can be viewed negatively or as a tremendous opportunity if we are willing to be courageous and creative. The recreational use of cannabis will lead to thousands of new jobs and hundreds of millions of new tax revenues for the state, she said. Lujan Grisham released an agenda for 2021 that included legalization among a list of legislative priorities. This week, a cannabis legalization bill cleared a House committee. New York. A number of times this year, Governor Andrew Cuomo, D., has discussed legalizing marijuana via the budget. He included the reform proposal in his budget request for the third consecutive year, and he recently announced that he would be sending an amended version to the legislature in hopes of striking a deal with lawmakers critical of certain provisions of his original proposal. The governor said in his State of the State address last month that New York will legalize adult-use recreational cannabis, joining 15 other states that have already done so. It will raise revenue and end over-criminalization of this product, which has left so many communities of color over-policed and over-incarcerated, he said. In his budget speech in January, Cuomo first previewed details of his legalization plan. We also propose legalizing adult-use cannabis, which would raise almost $350 million, he said, adding that $100 million would go into a social equity fund. That would give us $250 million toward the budget and our needs. Tuesday, the governor announced details of the amended budget plan to legalize marijuana that he sent to the legislature, with provisions for cannabis delivery services and a more refined approach to penalties for illegal sales. Pennsylvania. Earlier this month, Pennsylvania's governor said that marijuana legalization is a top priority as he prepares for his annual budget negotiations with lawmakers. However, his proposed spending request does not contain any legislation addressing the issue. According to a draft supplemental legislative plan for 2021, Pennsylvania has built a successful medical marijuana program through bipartisan work, and it is now the right time to legalize recreational marijuana in the Commonwealth, with a focus on helping businesses and restorative justice. According to Wolf's agenda distributed last year before his budget delivery, the legalization of cannabis would benefit both economic recovery and social equity. As neighboring states legalize cannabis, he said, Pennsylvania cannot afford to fall behind. Virginia. According to Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe during his State of the Commonwealth address last month, marijuana prohibition was intentionally set up generations ago to discriminate against people of color. Governor Ralph Northam, D., argued that cannabis criminalization is a clear example of how our criminal justice system treats different people unfairly, adding that black people are more likely to be arrested for cannabis despite the fact that their rates of usage are comparable. On the same day, the governor unveiled a comprehensive legalization bill, which is being promoted by leaders in both the House and Senate. He separately revealed a budget proposal in December that laid the groundwork to legalize marijuana by including millions of dollars to support efforts to expunge cannabis convictions as well as steps to set up the state to eventually sell commercial marijuana. We know that laws to ban marijuana historically were based on discrimination, and criminalization laws have disproportionately affected minority communities, Northam said during a speech announcing the budget. Both the House and the Senate passed marijuana legalization legislation this month, and now legislators are working to reconcile the differences into one unified proposal for Northam's signature. Wisconsin. As part of his budget proposal released Tuesday, Governor Tony Evers, D., proposed a proposal for marijuana legalization under state law. The legalization and taxation of marijuana in Wisconsin, just like we do already with alcohol, will ensure a controlled market and an available product for medicinal and recreational use, and may create countless social and economic benefits for the state as a whole. Despite the fact that Evers, who first announced the policy in his fiscal request earlier this month, didn't specifically mention it during his budget speech on Tuesday, the text of the plan given to lawmakers gives us an inside look at the proposals. Leaders in the Republican-controlled legislature are already pushing back strongly on the proposal. However, some members have indicated interest in decriminalizing cannabis or allowing it for medical purposes. Thank you for watching another video by my420spot.com.